Our spiritual master.
The only way to understand it is to true person. I bow down to the glory, great Almighty. By His grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the word emanating from His lotus mouth. Attachment to His lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord of earth after earth. From Him ecstatic praying emanates, and by Him is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of His character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds, and we take shelter of your lotus feet.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Okay. Do you have cartels somewhere? Thank you. All right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Vishnupad, Paramahansa Paravidikacharya, also Teta, Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chaitanya Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON, Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Acharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Ren Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha, Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopakavadath, Shyam Kunda, Radhakunda, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuram Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvadi Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deja Tarni. All right, today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 26th chapter, text 10. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha.
Yat Tat Tri Gunam Avyaktam Nityang Sad Asad Atmakam Pradhanam Prakritim Prahu Avishesham Visheshavat Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yattatri Gunam Avyaktam Nityam Sadasa Atmakam Pradhanam Prakritim Prahu Avishesham Visheshavat Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yattatri Gunam Avyaktam Nityam Sadasad Atmakam Pradhanam Prakritim Prahu Avishesham Visheshavat Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yattatri Gunam Avyaktam Nityam Sadasad Atmakam Pradhanam Prakritim Prahu Avishesham Visheshavat
Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Yattatri Gunamabhyaktam. Nityam Sarasaratmakam. Pradhanam Prakritim Prahur. Avishesham Visheshavat.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha.
Yattatri Gunam Avyaktam. Nityam Sadasat Atmakam. Pradhanam Prakritim Prahur. Avishesham Visheshavat.
Ladies,
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Yata Trigunam Avyaktam
Yata Trigunam Avyaktam
Nityam Sada Saratmakam
Nityam Sada Saratmakam
Pradhanam Prakritim
Pradhanam Prakritim
Prahu
Prabhu
Avishesham Visheshava
Avishesham Visheshava
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Yata Trigunam Avyaktam
Yata Trigunam Avyaktam
Nityam Sada Saratmakam
Nityam Sada Saratmakam
Pradhanam Prakritim Prahu
Pradhanam Prakritim Prabhu
Avishesham Visheshava
Avishesham Visheshava
Sri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Yaktat Trigunam Avyaktam
Yata Trigunam Avyaktam
Nityam Sat Asat Atkamam
Nityam Sada Saratmakam
Pradhanam Prantam Prahura
Pradhanam Prakritim Prabhu
Vishram Vishvasata
Avishesham Visheshava
All right. Shri Bhagavan Vacha,
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
the Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
Supreme Personality of Godhead said
Yat,
Yat,
now further,
now further
Tat,
Tat,
that,
that
Trigunam,
Trigunam
combination of the three modes,
combination of the three modes
Avyaktam,
Avyaktam
unmanifested,
unmanifested
Nityam,
Nityam,
eternal,
eternal
Sadasat Atmakam,
Sadasatmakam
consisting of cause and effect,
consisting of cause and effect
Pradhanam,
Pradhanam
Avipradhana,
Pradhanam
Prakritim,
Prakritim
Prakriti,
Prakriti
Prahu,
Prahu
they call,
they call
Avishesham,
Avishesham
undifferentiated,
undifferentiated
Visheshavat,
Visheshava
possessing differentiation.
possessing differentiation.
So translation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said the unmanifested eternal combination of the three modes is the cause of the manifest state and is called pradhana. It is called prakriti when in the manifested stage of existence. So you can repeat, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
the unmanifested eternal combination
the unmanifested eternal combination
of the three modes
of the three modes
is the cause of the manifest state
is the cause of the manifest state,
and is called pradhana.
and it's called Pradhana.
It is called prakriti
It's called Prakriti
when in the manifested stage of existence.
when in the manifested stage of existence.
So actually, okay, I'll explain this since it may be confusing to people. I'll explain it after we read the purport. So purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Lord points out material nature in its subtle stage, which is called pradhana, and He analyzes this pradhana. The explanation of pradhana and prakriti is that pradhana is the subtle, undifferentiated sum total of all material elements. Although they are undifferentiated, one can understand that the total elements are contained therein. What is the example I used yesterday? Remember the clay?
Yep. Silly clay.
The silly putty. The clay that's just like a lump. Everything's in it, but it hasn't any shape yet. So that's how you can picture the pradhana. And actually the word pradhana sometimes can be translated as primordial. Just like sometimes the scientists talk about the primordial soup, which they think all living entities came from, which is not true. Primordial soup in a reducing atmosphere, and there was a spark, and all of a sudden life came about, although the scientists are not able to reproduce that at all in spite of
But
all
the
their...
pradhana may be all the elements and the spark may be the jivas.
Yeah, the spark is the jivas. The jivas and Vishnu. But as far as what the scientists are saying, they're completely wrong because they haven't been able to actually copy it or manifest that in the laboratory. Although it's interesting when talking about life, scientists propose that life comes from matter. Whatever experiment they do, they have to have all these purified chemicals that undergo a lot of process in different laboratories in order to try to combine them and create life. You understand? Which is obviously, in the real world, you don't have purified chemicals. They're actually mixed with other chemicals. Anyway, something you should understand. So even if a scientist says, I have created amino acids, and they can create amino acids, we're not denying that. But that's because they went to all these laboratories, spent thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to get these super purified ingredients, which don't occur naturally in nature. I mean, you don't have these pure elements, everything's mixed in nature. And then they say they've created amino acids. And so, so they made some amino acids, but the amino acids are not life. Scientists can actually put together amino acids and proteins using amino acids. Actually, this body is, anyway, getting into science a little bit. This body is actually functioning because of proteins. Proteins are actually combinations of amino acids. And the combination of amino acids that is appropriate in the body, different combinations, different things. There's proteins that are messenger proteins. There are proteins, that means they carry messages all over the body or within a particular cell. There's proteins that form the structure of the body. There's proteins that give you energy. Anyway, there's all these different types of proteins, and they all are composed of combinations of amino acids. The smallest protein has 150 different amino acids in it. Not 150 different, but 150 amino acids is arranged in different patterns. So they form different structures that are helpful for the body. So basically, for all those proteins to come by chance, that's the amino acids to actually assemble by chance is basically almost impossible according to the theories of probability, information theory. Anyway, we don't want to talk about that right now. So let's just talk about undifferentiated sum total, the material elements. Although they are undifferentiated, one can understand that the total material elements are contained therein. When the total material elements are manifested by the interaction of the three modes of material nature, in other words, when they become active, as we described before, and the Lord glances, saikshata, and he impregnates the material energy with the jiva souls, then the manifestation is called prakriti. So anyone understands the difference? Prakriti and pradhana. Prakriti is what manifests from the pradhana when the Lord injects the pradhana with the living entities and with the three modes of nature and with the time factor. Got it? Okay, that's the differentiation. So it's really important to understand that differentiation. This is prakriti right now. Of course, impersonalists say that Brahman is without variegatedness and without differentiation. One may say that Brahman, Brahman is different than Pradhan. So just for those of you who don't know, Pradhan is the unmanifest stage of the modes of material nature. Brahman is spirit. The word Brahman also means, in Sanskrit, the greatest. So the impersonalists are confusing the Pradhan with the Brahman. That's one problem they have, amongst many other problems. But actually the Brahman stage is not Pradhan, Prabhupada says. Pradhan is distinct from Brahman because in Brahman there's no existence of the material modes of nature. So Pradhan, I'm sorry we have to pause through the purport, but it's important for me to explain all these different technical things. Otherwise, I may not get to them. So, the Pradhan is the Shakti of Brahman. And the Supreme Brahman is Krishna, but Brahman is also what? Paramatma and Bhagavan. Paramatma and the Brahma Jyoti. Vedanti tat tattva vedas tattvam jnanam advayam. Brahmeti paramatmeti Bhagavan iti shabdyate. Spirit has three different, at least the Supreme Spirit, the greatest, Brahman, has three different aspects. The impersonal effulgence, which is like the sunlight, using Prabhupada's example, the example in the Upanishads. The localized Paramatma, that means in everyone's heart, the Lord in the heart, God is in your heart, as you Christians say, isn't it? The Lord is in your heart. That's what I said. One time I was talking to one Christian, he said, the Lord is in my heart and directed me. And I said, because I'm speaking my southern accent, I said that if he's directing me, why do you go to the bar? He said, well, I don't know.
The Lord has a plan.
The Lord, I guess the Lord wants to get drunk. The Lord wants to witness someone like, anyway, having a hangover. Anyway, so the hangover is the reaction to getting drunk. Anyway, it's interesting how Krishna arranges in this material world. Whenever we try to enjoy, there's some thing like a hangover connected to it. You got to pay to play, as they say. So Krishna's around, sukha dukkha. There's always something connected with it. I mean, you go to Disneyland or Disney World, and you pay $1,000 a day just to get frustrated standing in line. So anyway, Brahman stage is not the Pradhan. Pradhan is because in Brahman there is no existence of the material modes of nature. One may argue that the Mahatattva is also different from the Pradhan because in the Mahatattva there are manifestations. All right, let's explain what Mahatattva is. How about that? Mahatattva. Here, the word tattva means something that is, or something that has a eternal existence. When we talk about tattva, the word tattva means it is. In other words, it exists, as we explained yesterday, quoting the verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Nasato vijate bhavo manabhavo vijate sataha ubhayarapi drishto antas 20 tatvatavshavihi. Things that continue to exist are real. That's a tattva. You understand? Like Jiva Tattva, the soul. Vishnu Tattva continues to exist. This table is not a tattva. It's a table or a stand, or whatever you may call it. Because it's not going to continue to exist. Your body is not a tattva, although it's composed of the material energy, which is a tattva. Okay. And the sages are called tattva darshis. Everybody understand that? That means people who see the tattvas. The Bhagavad Gita deals with different tattvas, like Vishnu tattva, Jiva tattva, the time factor, the material energy, etc., like that, right? The Supreme Lord, I left him out. So this is what a tattva is. So when we read the Vedic literature in Prabhupada's books, we try to understand what the tattvas are, or what the nature of the tattvas are. Those things which continue. What the Jiva tattva is, what the soul is, what God is, what the material energy is. And Bhagavad Gita actually teaches us about the nature of the tattvas, okay? So what is the Mahatattva? Let's get to the point. Maha means great. Just like you have Mahaprasadam, which I guess is a tattva. So, continues to exist until you eat it. And you transform it into something that's not so nice. Anyway, so Maha-tattva means the great tattva, which is a portion of the spiritual world which is cloudy. It's like the other day we had clouds. The sun continued to exist. As we mentioned yesterday, the sun was not covered by those clouds. We were covered by those clouds, right? So there's a cloudy section in the whole spiritual world. So we're in the spiritual world. As they say, let the sun shine in. Or what? Here comes the sun. You know that song? Here comes the sun. Anyway, so we are in the cloudy section of the spiritual world, and we're trying to look for a break in the clouds. That's Krishna consciousness. In these clouds, continuing with that metaphor, they are clouding our consciousness. And according to the modes of nature, you got different, I'm continuing with the metaphor, which I'm developing right now in my imagination. According to the modes of nature, you got different clouds. Like you have, I'm not so familiar with the types of clouds in the material world, the cirrus, cumulus, and things like that. But you have like these really heavy clouds, like a tornado. Like we had tornadoes here. Dark. Just like we were at Walmart, where America worships. Anyway, so we were at Walmart, and it was getting really dark. It was during the day. So that's like the mode of ignorance. And this is something you got nice clouds, light clouds, fluffy clouds. And those are like the mode of goodness. How about that metaphor? And you got some clouds in between. So the Mahatattva is like the tornado clouds. And that's where we are. In the Mahatattva, in the dark section. So within the Mahatattva, there are manifestations. That's what's mentioned here, this way. The Mahatattva is different from the Pradhan. The Pradhan is manifested, is the unmanifest stage of the modes of nature. It's undifferentiated. It means there's no variety. That's what undifferentiated means. And that's within the Mahatattva. But there's other things within the Mahatattva too. The Mahatattva is the neighborhood. Does everybody understand that? It's a dark neighborhood. It's the bad neighborhood. Like nobody wants to move into a bad neighborhood, right? You can't sell your house if you're living in a bad neighborhood. High crime area. Oh my God. So we're in the high crime area of the spiritual world, where basically everyone is a criminal. Or we're in the prison house in the material world. That's what Durga means, to move with great difficulty. Where everyone is a criminal. I remember when I was a brahmachari, one time I said to some other devotee that I am not guilty. And they said, just the fact that you're walking around with a material body means you're guilty. It's like this story we read when we were young. It's called The Scarlet Letter. Anyone's read that? Nowadays they don't read it anymore because it's not politically correct. So it's about a lady who was a member. Probably she wasn't a member of the world's oldest occupation, but anyway, she wasn't. She was actually a little unchaste, and she wore this. She had to be given this big A adultery to wear, and so this is the Scarlet Letter. I'm not justifying what they did to the poor girl, or like when I went to the university, if you broke a thermometer in chemistry class, you have to wear it for a week. Anyone's ever seen that?
No.
It was a punishment. You don't break anything because you have to wear whatever you break for a week. It's really embarrassing. It's like a dunce cap. They used to have dunce caps. So we are wearing, what are we wearing? This material body. So that is our dunce cap, thermometer, scarlet letter, whatever you may call it. And we're here. It's like you go to, another example Prabhupada gave is prison houses. You go to the prison house and just about everybody is, or many people are saying, I was innocent, you know. I mean, some people are innocent in the prison house, but Krishna doesn't send people to this prison house if they're innocent. So, anyway, so this is the dark area, this is the dungeon, this is the cloudy area of the of the spiritual world, which is called the Mahat Tattva. The actual explanation of Pradhan, however, is given here. When the cause and effect are not clearly manifested of yakta, the reaction of the total elements does not take place. In other words, there's no time factor, there's no cause and effect. When there's no cause and effect, nothing happens materially. Spiritually, there's no need of cause and effect. I mean, that may be enough to, as they say, blow your mind. Because in the spiritual world, there's no, it's the cause of all causes. Krishna's, sarva karana karanam. He's the cause of all causes. So there's no need of cause and effect. Everything is just timeless. But still, at the same time, there's activities. How is that possible? Don't ask me. This is called the chincha. It's inconceivable. There's activities, there's loving relationships, there's emotions, but there's none of this, like time factor, cause and effect, or in the spiritual world. It's just basically everything's be here now, as they say, right? Be here now. Mindfulness, isn't it? Just like when you're in the zone, it's like mindfulness. Anyone here is a musician? No musicians. Yeah. So musicians have this thing, and writers, and people who are creative. I guess mechanics too, isn't it? I mean, they get in the zone. They go beyond. In one sense, materially, it appears like they're beyond time and space, right? Like you enter, you become, basically, you don't merge into the music, but you become one with the music in one sense. One and different simultaneously. That's a way to explain a chincha beta beta tattva, too. That the musician, he gets into the zone. And some devotees, they get into the zone when they're chanting. And other devotees zone out when they're chanting. Zone out. It's called space out. Zone out. So they get so really, that's the spiritual world. There's no material cause and effect, no time factor, and they're in the zone. That's pretty cool, isn't it? They're actually in the zone and love of Krishna 24 hours a day. Just like when sometimes people fall in love in this world and they're in the zone temporarily until the honeymoon's over. But anyway, so, isn't it? They get in the zone, they're just like absorbed. Just like that, what was that? The Broadway musical song, West Side Story. Anyone seen it? Maria, Maria. I never stop chanting Hare Krishna. No. I wish I was like that with Krishna consciousness, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Like Prabhupada's godbrother, Krishnadas Babaji was like that. If you would ask him a question, Babaji means he's just absorbed in chanting. If you would ask him a question, he would just respond by chanting Hare Krishna. He'd say, I go up to say, in ISKCON we have this problem. What do you think about this? And he'd go, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. And he was blissful. And I was in anxiety. So that's in the zone. So that's what Krishna conscious, like you look at Prabhupada. You know, when I was with Prabhupada, I mean, he was always in the Krishna conscious zone. He wasn't really here in this world. You look at him, and every single motion he made was basically an act of love of Krishna, a manifestation of love of Krishna, right? I remember just sitting behind Prabhupada, standing behind Prabhupada, Prabhupada's on the Vyasasana, and he's chanting, he's playing the cartels, and just watching his fingers. Anyone's ever done that here?
Yeah, my
I mean, it's just like, wow, I could watch that forever. And then even watching his head and the hairs in his ears. And like George Harrison said, that Prabhupada was an amazing musician. And George Harrison was an amazing musician too. So because Prabhupada was absorbed, focused, Ekeha Kurunandana, one-pointed, and that's the zone, right there. So that's Krishna consciousness. So then the spiritual world, getting back to the point, they were all focused like that in the zone, and it's just like fun and pain fun too. Emotions, emotions sometimes are painful, but they're ecstasy at the same time in the spiritual world. It's like separation from Krishna. In the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it's described in the spiritual world that sometimes Krishna apparently goes to Mathura, and the residents of Vrindavan are feeling great pain, but that pain is just love. Just like sometimes in this world, a mother is feeling great pain when she hears her child cry, but she doesn't want to get rid of that pain. That pain is a manifestation of her love. Okay, so getting back to the material world, the Pradhan. Pradhan is not the time element, because in the time element there are actions and reactions, which is what I just said, creation and annihilation. Nor is it the jiva, or marginal potency of living entities. So Prabhupada is differentiating here. Actually, he's quoting from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, commentary, because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes this very clear in his own commentary, which I did read. So he's talking about the differences. Pradhan is not the living entity. Pradhan is not the Mahatattva. The Pradhan is not Brahman. Remember, this is what he went through previously in the purport. Because the designations of the living entities are not eternal. What does that mean? The designations, that means the upadhis. That's a technical Sanskrit word. Like our designation, white or black or male or female or American or old or young. These are not eternal. These are designations, labels that we put on ourselves because of the body, sometimes because of the body, but it's changing from lifetime to lifetime. The material energy is endlessly mutable. So from one lifetime to another, our designations change. We may be dog one life, or human being the next life, or a southerner in this life. What is that? Oh, I won't even say the coon and so. In this life. No?
I can't hear.
Oh, you can't? I won't tell you what I was going to say. So, it's a southern term.
That's only in
Louisiana, yeah. Sorry about that. So, but anyways, it's all temporary, like a soap bubble. One adjective used in this connection is nitya, which indicates eternality. Therefore, the condition of material nature immediately previous to its manifestation is called pradhan. So, the pradhan, or the material energy itself, is nitya, is eternal. But the Prakriti sometimes is manifest and sometimes not manifest. Prakriti is the, again, just to reiterate what I just said, Prakriti is the manifestation when the Praman becomes injected with the three modes of nature and the living entities and the time factor. You got that? Everybody understands that? Okay. So let's get into something a little bit more interesting. Because Prabhupada, I wanted to talk about these two words in the Sanskrit. This is manifestation and not manifested. Let's go back to the Sanskrit. Hold on a second. Let me go back to my Sanskrit here. Whoops, that's not the Sanskrit. Give me a second. Here we go. So there's, Prakritim Prabhu. As Vyaktam and Avyaktam, manifest and unmanifested. Oh, here's the words. Vishesham and Vishesha Vat. Avishesha means undifferentiated. Vishesha Vat means possessing differentiation. And I'm going to talk about that in relationship to Mayavadi philosophy or impersonal philosophy. Because in impersonal philosophy, there's two words, avishesha and there's nirvishesha and vishesha. So just like in the pranam mantra to Srila Prabhupada, we have this, what is it? Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharni Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tejatardi. So this translation of the pranam mantra is that I offer my obeisances unto the servant of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it's Prabhupada, who has come to this Western world. Interesting, Prabhupada actually had the Western world in his pranam mantra, which is where we are. And he's come to defeat, or the Western world, which is full of impersonalism and voidism, and he's come, I'm just making a purport on Prabhupada's pranam mantra, he's come to defeat impersonalism and voidism. So we're not going to talk about voidism right now, that's the modern Buddhist interpretation. But let's talk about impersonalism. Impersonalism means nirvishesha in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, just to make it, vishesha means differentiated, nirvishesha means without differentiation. So the impersonalists say the ultimate realization, especially the followers of Shankaracharya, actually there's a lot of controversy as to what Shankaracharya actually said and what his followers are presenting as what he said. It's a really interesting thing that I've studied a little bit about. But anyway, the followers of Shankaracharya, they say the Lord is nirvishesha, the ultimate realization of God is nirvishesha. And the personal manifestation of God is something called vivarta, or illusion. I'm trying to be not too technical here so everyone can follow. There's two words that's important to understand. Okay, let me define two words right now. One word is called vivarta, which means illusion. And the other word is parinam, which means transformation. Can everyone remember those two words?
How do you spell the second one?
Parinam. Parinam means transformation. They say the illusion, the impersonalists, the so-called followers of Shankaracharya, say that there's the illusory transformation of Brahman And that's differentiation, vishesha. Then we got another word here. Vishesha means differentiation. So that it's illusory. Brahman doesn't actually become transformed, but it's illusory transformation, and that's why we think we're individuals. Otherwise, we are all Brahman. We are all one. Does that make sense? I know it doesn't make sense, because we're not all one.
That's what they think.
Because we're all one, and somehow or other there's some illusion, that's called vivarta, remember the word vivarta? That we think we're different, and we think that there's a personality of God. But actually, there's only undifferentiated Brahman. And when we become Brahman conscious, that's why we chant Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi. These are called Mahavakyas, or great sayings of impersonalists. So when we become realized, we realize we're not we. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Were they?
That's pretty crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
We realize that we're not we. So, of course, the problem with that particular philosophy, I mean, the way to defeat them is, how did Brahman become an illusion? To think that the one is the we. That means there is a superior force called illusion, which acted on the Brahman. Therefore, Brahman is not Brahman, because Brahman means the greatest. Try to follow the logic. Brahman is the greatest. The greatest is the illusion. Because illusion is superior to Brahman. Anyway, this is the way to defeat the Shankarites. I mean, they don't have any argument for this. Anyway, so that's the way to defeat them. So that's called Vivarta Vad. Brahman is an illusion, and there's the false transformation of Brahman. So anyway, so that's the interesting concept. However, we also believe in Vivarta and Parinam, illusion and transformation. But our application in Krishna consciousness is quite different. What is our application? We believe that, yes, we are spirit souls, we are part and parcel of Krishna, and we can fall into illusion because, as I mentioned yesterday, we're marginal potency to the Lord. And Krishna's illusory potency, that is one of Krishna's potencies, one of the tattvas, the Shakti of the Lord, is more powerful than us. So we are subject to Vivarta. The Lord is not subject to Vivarta. Here's an interesting twist on this. The devotees, because of their love, can be subjected to Prema Vivarta. That's Yogamaya. Just like this, what was it? Oh, Jagannatha Pandit wrote this book called Prema Vivarta. Some of you may have read this book. Prema Vivarta. So the devotees may be subjected to the Vivarta of love of Krishna, in which they obviously treat Krishna as the most lovable object and forget that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But that's Yogamaya. That's called Prema Vivarta. I hope I'm not getting too technical in this class. And as far as Parinam is concerned, transformation, Brahman doesn't get transformed. We don't get transformed. What gets transformed? The Lord's energies. Just like we heard, the pradhan gets transformed, right? Because when the pradhan is injected with the time factor and the jivas and three modes of nature, then there's transformation. So we believe in Shakti Parinam. Okay, there's another word for you, Shakti. Shakti means what? Energy. So the Shaktis of the Lord become transformed. Brahman never becomes transformed. And we don't become transformed. We become an illusion, but not transformed. That's why when we perform devotional service, if we chant, we remember who we are. Because we've never become transformed, we've just forgotten who we are. That's why Prabhupada said it's not an artificial imposition on the mind, devotional service. Prabhupada equated chanting with the alarm clock going on in the morning. Because most of you, they just push the snooze button on the alarm clock. And some people don't even hear the alarm. Oh, did my alarm go off? Prabhupada said a devotee should sleep like a dog. That's Chanakya Pandit actually said that. Prabhupada was quoting Chanakya Pandit. Why? Now that we are dogs.
Because the dog can wake up.
You know, dog hears a little noise. Ruff, ruff, ruff. So when we're sleeping, if, you know, there's a little Krishna, we wake up. Mangalarti, Haribo! But instead of Mangalarti, oh my God. Was that song 16 rounds, what do I get? Another day older and deeper in debt. Yamaraj, don't call me, because I can't go. I owe my soul. Anyway, you get the song.
It's gone stolen.
So that's why chanting, it wakes you up. You're in amnesia. And chanting and the process of devotional service, the deity worship, and practically everything we do is to keep reminding you like we would remind a person in amnesia about, you know, hey, you're married to so-and-so. These are your kids, huh? Kids, what's your name, kid? This is little Poopsie or whatever it is. And then you just and say, wow, oh yeah, I remember now. My name is Bir Krishna Goswami. I'm not married. I'm a sannyasi. So, that's the process of devotional service. So that's why we say that bhakti is inherent in the soul. It's part of the soul. We talk about the bhakti latapish and everything like that, but actually the bhakti is inherent and it's woken up. Jeev Jago, Gaurachandra Bole, Kota Nidra Yalmaya, Pisa Chira Kole. So we wake up. So we chant. I mean, I realized that when I first came to the Krishna consciousness movement. I just chanted, hey, haven't I been doing this before? The first time I circumambulated Tulsi, of course, at first I thought it was weird, people running around a bush and bowing down to a bush. But after I tried it, deja vu, Prabhu. You know, somehow or other, I've been doing this before. So it's like that. You know, that's why when we go out, we simply have to expose people the holy name. We don't have to beat them over the head, you know, with a hammer or broomstick or whatever it's saying, you know, surrender, you're going to hell. Because if you expose people to Krishna consciousness, even if they have this Agyata Sukriti, right, unknowing devotional service, they start to remember, hey, I'm a devotee. Hare Krishna. I mean, I was just reading this wonderful book written by this devotee Govinda, who was Lord Chaitanya's servant. Has anyone read this?
No.
Govinda Kadacha. It was translated by Banu Maharaj. It's actually Lord Chaitanya's servant, his diary. I highly recommend it. It's on Kindle, you know, Amazon. And so I was reading this, how Lord Chaitanya would come in touch with these people and just get them to chant. Of course, we're not Lord Chaitanya and don't have that same potency, but, and then all of a sudden, Mayavadis, you know, demons and dacoits and everything like that, these all of a sudden become great devotees and renunciates. Just by chanting. I mean, it's amazing. So the chanting has that potency. And the prasadam has that potency, and our process of devotional service has that potency. And so that's the point. And then we'll wake up people from this vivarta, or illusion. We don't transform them. It's not parinam. It's not parinam. One does it, in one sense, externally it appears like a transformation, hippies to happies, But they were already happies, but they forgot that they were happies. So, anyway, this is, I guess, the time. I don't want to speak too much. I'll try to bring a little philosophy and make it practical at the end. So, any questions or comments? Yes?
Yeah, Maharaj. And what I understood, when this consciousness, the Shiva is in contact with the material nature.
Yes.
This material nature manifests.
That's right.
Okay. And what is the mechanic, when this, how the spiritual soul, leave the spiritual sky?
How does that happen at the spiritual scope?
How can you get into the material world and be affected, by the...
Trying to remember how I got into the mature world. No, it's described Krishna Bahira Mukha. We turned our face away from Krishna. Prabhupada said, it probably gave a very interesting metaphor. He said, just like when a little girl sees her mother cooking, and she says, Mom, I would like to have my own stove and cook too. This is Prabhupada's example. And the little girl gets one of these tin stoves with a light bulb in it.
Easy bake.
Yeah, what is it called?
Easy bake.
Easy Bake. One of my friends had that, and she made a mud pie for me. When I was little, you said girlfriends, we were both about 5 years old, so. And I tried it, and it was not so nice with the mud pie. So Prabhupada said, we were making these mud pies, and that's the Tukalayam Shashvatam, It always has an aftertaste to it. So, one sense, it's also a nadi karma pale. You can't really trace out your beginning because it's beyond time. And also, when you actually go back to Krishna and back to Godhead, it's like you were never gone because this beyond time in the spiritual world. You'll have you won't remember New Taliban. Sorry about that. You won't remember anything to do with the material world, but you'll remember you'll have in your consciousness the lesson you learned from coming here. Therefore, Jakwa Deham Buddha Punarjanma Naiti. You won't want to come back. Because you'll be traumatized. It's called PTSD. Traumatized by the material world. It is traumatic, I tell you that. Some of you young folks think, you always speak like that. Well, it's just traumatic. But, be around for a few years and see the end result, isn't it? It's like some of you, not some of you, we're all getting older. Some of you are getting older. That's completely wrong. Anyway. But
some of us have gotten older.
What?
Some of us have gotten older.
Some of you have gotten older.
We're there.
You're not getting older, you've gotten it. And some of you have been in the hospital a few times. Some of you, some of you have experienced extreme pain. And anyway, I guess I want to give that message. All right, so Gokul, or Dwi, or
I was just going to mention what you were saying there, that there were two analogies. That somebody asked you, Prabhupada, what will we get back to the spiritual world? Will we come back here again? You probably know this, but he said, we'll remember it like if you touch a hot stove.
Yeah.
You never touch it again. And they said, well, what will we remember it like? He said, like a bad dream, like a nightmare.
Yeah, like a nightmare. I mean, like in my own childhood, another childhood example. One time I was playing with matches, and my mother, in order to teach me a lesson, I don't know if it was a good idea, she had me touch something very hot. And from that point forward, I have this really healthy respect for fire. You know, when I see devotees in the temple lighting fires, lighting, not in the fireplace, but like candles on the altar, I get a little nervous. Because, I've experienced that. I don't remember the specific incidents. I know it happened. So it's something like that. Yes, go cool.
So you mentioned that we won't remember, say, New Taliban, but Prabhupada did say in a letter that we'll have our ISKCON in the spiritual sky.
Yes.
So it'll be like a part of I don't know exactly all the different unlimited possibilities.
Yeah.
But, there's the Chaitanya wing,
Yeah.
and within that Chaitanya wing, there's branches, and there'll be the Gaudiya Math wing, or
Yeah.
ISKCON will be part of that.
Yeah. I mean, there's that. I mean, Lord Jesus Christ has his place in the spiritual world.
Yeah.
Whether it will be called ISKCON, I highly doubt that.
But,
Because, you wouldn't be saying, in the spiritual world, you wouldn't say International Society. No, it wouldn't be international, whatever.
Planetary.
Inter Vaikuntha, IVCON, Inter Vaikuntha consciousness or something.
So, but I then was thinking, is that first of all, you can have apparently what stage? Well, this question is it's progressive spiritual life, from my
Yes.
understanding.
Yes.
You can progress and go from more absorbed friendship or more
Yes.
absorbed servitude to friendship, but also some of these very exalted personalities have apparently several personalities.
Yeah.
They existed
On
so
different
it
planes.
It is progressive. I don't know if you call it transformation, but it is progressive.
Yeah. Prabhupada was asked, can one change their rasa? Go progress, which Prabhupada said yes, but it's rare. It's rare because usually we have this constitutional rasa. I mean, just for example, you have Anupama, who is Rupa Goswami's and Sanatana Goswami's brother, and his relationship is with Lord Ramchandra, and Rupa and Sanatan tried their best. Chant Hare Krishna, Prabhu. And he tried, and he was crying, and he couldn't give up his attachment for the Lord Ramchandra. So they were trying to get him to change, and he was fixed. So generally it's like that. You wake up. But our bhakti itself is inherent in the heart. Although, there can be some change in the spiritual world. But generally it doesn't happen. But the love of Krishna is inherent. So, yes, please.
One last thing is, Maharaj, the term Nityamukta and Nityabhava, that it kind of confuses me how one can be eternally conditioned. And because you hear Lord Chaitanya delivering these souls simply by talking to me, thinking, well, is it a setup? These souls who are Nityamukta and he sits playing, and it's hopeless for the souls like us who are, Nityabhava. So I just wanted to.
Nitya, in that particular sense, is used in, I guess, a poetic way that it's so long, been down so long, it seems like up to me or something like that. That it's just a long time. Like if you ask Yogendra, how long have you been in New Taliban? He says, forever. He's like a fixture here. And Vibhuti, you're like a fixture. Not me, you're a human being. I didn't say you're just like a light fixture. That would be an insult. But sometimes we use these words, and it's called hyperbole. You say, sometimes even in the Vedic literatures, like if it's described that someone has 10 million wives, like Jishiketu, there's different ways the acharyas understand it. Some people say, well, it was so many, 10 million. As a population is more than the population of many states in the United States. That's a lot. So, and you know, or you can take it literally, but sometimes you just speak in hyperboles. You know, that means you exaggerate things to make a point.
And the next part was if, like when you hear about Vaikuntha Loka,
Yeah,
you know, it's like sort of like worship Krishna, a lot of awe and reverence, etc. But in Goloka Vrindavan, there's worshiping Krishna, his mother, father, milking the cows. Krishna
Right.
wants to play with you, go swimming. So it seems like, what would be the point of creating these landless universe where people just worship in a way like that for the soul? Seems like there would be a lot more going on. And I know it sounds weird, but even in the material world, you would be able to do some service, or you'd be able to spread Krishna consciousness or something like that. What would be I mean, it just seems like that's not attractive if one wants to be active in Krishna service. If you're going to
you mean the
place-
Vaikuntha planets are not that attractive?
Yeah, you're just hanging out basically.
No, it's not. It's not. You just have this mood of awe and reverence. Like you don't tell that to Hanuman.
But what's your purpose? You
His
know?
purpose is servant. I'm his servant.
But Krishna doesn't need your service. No one needs your
No,
service.
he doesn't need it, but you need it, and Krishna enjoys that mood. He enjoys that's one of the moods of love. I mean, although, you know, most of us, I guess, in the Krishna conscious movement are, you know, let's say in a higher rasa than that. Like, you know, generally the Gaudiya Vaishnavas are Sakya Ras and Vatsalya Ras, Madhurya Ras. But there's many servants. I mean, even in Goloka Vrindavan, you have servants of Krishna. And that's just people's nature. You know, Hanuman has that nature. I'm just a servant of Ram. He never goes to Ram and just pats him on the back and says, "Hey, Ram, buddy, how you doing? You know, how are the kids?" You always see Hanuman just serving.
Is there? I mean, there may be more to the story. It's,
I mean, they're in ecstasy just serving. I mean, just like, what is our relationship with Prabhupada? It's nectar just being a servant of Prabhupada, isn't it? I don't need to go up to Prabhupada and have any other sort of relationship with Prabhupada. I mean, I think it would be improper anyway.
I think the question is more about what is the it just seems like the jiva soul is a particle of energy
Yeah.
expended from the Lord. And the conditioned souls in this world are suffering so much. Right?
Yeah.
So we're sitting up here doing arti. Why? I mean, it just doesn't seem like the nature of the Lord would be that, yeah, just come and worship me, and then all these souls down here are suffering. You could be delivering them. I mean, it just doesn't seem like that.
We're doing that.
It seems weird to me.
Well, we need our own personal purification has to be there to be able to deliver people. Our own side. That's part of our sadhana. First of all, we have to realize that we're servants. And all these activities, the Pancharatriki Vidhi, is meant to help us imbibe that particular mood, that we're servants. Until we can imbibe that mood, we can't progress to anything higher. That's why, I mean, why does the Bhagavatam start with awe and reverence stuff, you know, like the creation, the subsequent creation, isn't it? So the lotus feet of the Lord. I mean, I was talking about this the other day. I talk about this quite often. That when I look at the deities and I look at the feet, what do I think I want to serve? If I jump too fast to the face, I think, I think Krishna is beautiful and everything like that. But the same service mood doesn't manifest in my heart. It's interesting. Jivara Swarupa Nitya Krishna Das. I'm eternally a servant of Krishna. So it doesn't manifest in my heart if I look at the face. If I look at the feet, what can I do for you, Krishna? Isn't it? I mean, try it sometimes. You know, just go to the deities and just meditate on their feet. And immediately, at least for me, it works. I think, I got to do something. I guess I can't just stay here staring at their feet all day long. Got to do something. So, This service is such a nice mood. I mean, it's so sweet. And the perfection of service is in the gopis. Because the service mood becomes further enhanced as you move up the rasas. The gopis are wanting to serve Krishna so much they're willing to go to hell to cure Krishna's headache, right? That's the perfection of service. Whereas the other devotees, according to at least the story, is they say, no, we can't give the dust from our feet to Krishna because we'll go to hell, it would be displeasing to Krishna. But the gopis are thinking, whatever it takes, Krishna, you may cross me by your embrace, leave me brokenhearted by not being present before me, but you're completely free to do anything and everything, and you remain my worshipful object of love.
I want to apologize for speaking out when he said something just then.
Oh.
But I felt like, well, the point is that we're creating a spiritual atmosphere that, like it says, if we're doing the sacrifices, the demigods are pleased and things will come. They may not, the rest of the society doesn't understand it, but we're helping society by performing transcendental activities. And that emanates out, and the demigods will be pleased and Krishna will be pleased.
But also, if we want to please Krishna, actually something I did want to talk about, then the thing that pleases Krishna the most is service to devotees. Right. Actually, Krishna says, he who says he's my servant, from the Adi Purana, is not my servant, but he's a servant of my servant. So it's Vaishnava care, and actually care for all living entities, is the most pleasing thing to Krishna. So sometimes we become so wrapped up in our rituals that we neglect that, or sometimes we become so wrapped up in the necessities of management and finances that we neglect that, and then Krishna is never pleased by that situation. So that's really what pleases Krishna. That's the greatest sacrifice. Or sacrifice not in the sense of giving something up, but it's the most pleasing thing to Krishna. Yeah.
Maharaj, a lot of times I hear that the Hare Krishna movement, we're following like the mood of the gopis or in the footsteps of the gopis. So what comes to my mind is how, especially the early disciples, how they just dropped everything and they came to serve Srila Prabhupada, they came to serve Krishna's movement. And also the fact that a lot of times devotees, we're seen by modern society in the light, like we do things that they would reject. How the gopis, they were like crossing boundaries that others would not cross. And definitely, I would say devotees today, we're just living a different lifestyle together. And so it's sort of like, in a sense, quote unquote, with the outcasts. But is that a correct way of thinking of that? Because I'm trying to a little bit.
Well, at least in the early days, that was the mood. That you give up everything in society and gung-ho, just forget about the future, even materially. I think now as our movement progresses, if the movement has progressed, we have to think more long-term, rather than rejecting society, more like integrated into society and transforming society. Yeah, I think that's the stage. I mean, in the beginning it was necessary to start the movement, to kickstart the movement. You needed people who were just like ready to give up everything, like myself. And I'm happy I made the choices I did. I'm really happy I made the choices I did. But at different stages, you need different types of, try different strategies. So the strategy now, I think, should be to become part of the American landscape or whatever country you're in, and be accepted and do things that are actually revolutionary, be different in our own way with our diet and certain aspects of the lifestyle, but also teach people how to integrate Krishna consciousness into their own lives. Because if we're too radical at this point, I mean, in the 1960s it was cool to be radical, wasn't it? It was just like, I mean, dress as a devotee. I mean, boy, I mean that was conservative. I mean, I remember before I joined the movement, I just tie-dyeing all my clothes and having flowers in my hair. I don't know if I did that.
It was considered cool, but in my case, growing up in the sixties, it was very highly dysfunctional.
Yeah,
Our family was highly dysfunctional.
yeah, it's actually quite dysfunctional. I have to say that. It was
It's very sad.
cool and dysfunctional. So we don't suggest people do that. We want people stani stata shrutikatam tanvano. So stay where you are.
You know, I don't want to get into a whole discussion about that, but there is some evidence now with, say, the Catholics, where, you know, we all knew how the nuns wore certain clothing that was supposed to be the
Yeah.
clothing of that period.
Yeah,
So then the last, 20, 30 years, they started to adjust and dress in a less, more contemporary way. But then they have found that by dressing that way, they themselves have lost some of their own,
sense of identity.
and then also people don't see them in the same way.
That's true. I mean, when I see a nun in a mini skirt, I definitely think, yeah, they've done that. It happened. Not nowadays, but it was like, I think 30 years ago. The nuns were getting much more into their stuff. Anyway, definitely, yes, I mean, I agree with you. Whether the style is important or whether it's the mood of the dressing. Like, for example, if someone comes to the temple dressed in a fashion that's disrespectful, whether it's Western dress or Indian dress, that's one thing. But if someone comes to the temple dressed nicely, let's say someone comes on Sunday and they wear a tie and a jacket, I consider that very respectful. So it's the mood of the dress, I think, rather than the what we call the ethnic style that's important. So I would like to see people come to the temple dressed. I'm not saying ties and jackets. I'm not criticizing anyone here, but just in clean clothes, respectable to the deities, like that, not in a bathing suit or something.
Yeah, I'm a person that does come here with jeans on and with a kirtan.
Well, I think jeans are fine if they're clean.
Yeah, but there are a lot of angles of looking at this subject, and before we make any blanket statements about this or that.
Yeah, I think there's different angles of looking at it, and there's certainly a sense of identification by wearing a certain style of dress. Like Prabhupada talked about that, a policeman's uniform.
Right.
But I think it's a question of being practical. What's best for your consciousness? What's best for approaching people? I mean, for example, like when dealing with students at the university, I first tried dressing in standard Western clothes, and the students just basically treated me like one of the gang, which wasn't so helpful for preaching. But then there's an expectation that even students have that if someone's called Swami, they're going to look a little different. Whereas we have the devotees who are not sannyasis generally, isn't it? They wear Western clothes. But there's expectations. People are more respectful. Like if someone comes, let's say a priest comes, he comes and gives a lecture at the church and he's dressed in his muumuus. People are going to think that that's really weird, isn't it? So, they expect the priest to be dressed. I mean, there's expectations. So I think it's just, there's no set answer to that. I think we have to be practical also for our own consciousness. So, anyway. Tweet.
Since we only get your kind association like once or twice a year,
Oh my God. You are fortunate.
There has
only
been-
once or twice.
I've been seeing more and more, there's a segment of society that sort of wants to claim that Srila Prabhupada's not ISKCON anymore. And I just thought I would get you to put it on record that what that actual status is with Srila Prabhupada within our International Society for Krishna Consciousness.
Well, ISKCON is Prabhupada's a vehicle for spreading Krishna consciousness. And it continues to be. I mean, ISKCON is it's not perfect. We have our imperfections, we have our crises, our strategies, problems. That's that's natural. And generally institutions, one has to be very careful about this because generally institutions take away the spirit of the spiritual path. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said this. So one has to be careful while being a member of an institution not to become institutionalized. You remember, you understand it's a vehicle, it's Prabhupada's vehicle because without any sort of organization, you're not going to be able to affect any large amount of people. There's practicality. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur recognized this, and he said that directly. But at the same time, he set up his Gaudiya Math. And he tried his best. Of course, the Gaudiya Math broke up because they didn't follow his instructions, as we know, as far as their management structure is concerned. So, it's a vehicle. And the vehicle is working with all of its imperfections. So it's working somehow or other, doing things. I mean, there's a lot of even bad things that have happened in ISKCON. Really bad things. There's a lot of good things that have happened. So one shouldn't be blind to those things and just think that, everything about ISKCON is beautiful and wonderful. It's not. But one should try to correct those things that are not beautiful and wonderful. That's, I've been trying to do that. All right. Interesting question. I think we have to end because it's beautiful and wonderful to take prasadam. And, that's my favorite activity. Giving class is all right, but, taking prasadam beats everything else.
Even though your selection of food is very limited.
Yes, as they say, pauper is proud of his penny, so I'm very attached to my chickpeas. You may be eating laglus and ladus and glubshamins, and I'm eating dried chickpeas, but
They're just chickpeas transformed.
but I'm getting the same pleasure out of eating my chickpeas that you're getting from your laglus. It's a question of the mind, actually. It's interesting how the mind works. If you tell your mind this chickpea is the greatest ecstatic prasadam that you've ever taken in your life, you can convince your mind of that. The mind is really interesting. For one who has conquered the mind, he's the greatest friend. And one has failed to do so, he's the worst enemy, Bhagavad Gita says. So as far as the diet, I'm definitely not complaining. I'm not complaining because it's a question of the mind. The mind can be acclimated to almost anything. Like you see, people are eating bugs nowadays. Isn't it? Because it's full of protein. Cockroaches.
They have a book how to do it.
Yeah, I know. And so you go to certain countries and like the liquid dog thing. That was considered a delicacy.
Yeah, when the Vietnamese were coming over after the war, they were giving them money for food, but they would, all of a sudden dogs started disappearing in the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And then they would bury them. And you'd go by where they were living and you could smell.
Yeah, so anyway, people develop, Like alcohol, for example. I remember, you know, probably the only time I never got drunk, but the only time I ever drank a little bit was at my bar mitzvah. I don't know if you know what a bar mitzvah is.
The ritual, it's part of the ritual.
It's part of the ritual. You know, it signifies you become a man so you can drink liquor. So, at 13, which is against the law. So they gave me a little bit, I think it was wine or something like that. It was just like fire water. I said, ew. But then I asked a devotee, later on a devotee came to the movement she was a drunkard before. And I asked her, how could you tolerate it? She said, after a while it becomes like nectar. Yeah. It becomes nectar. It's hard for me to understand how something that I had a distaste for can become like nectar. But it's like that. Langa, again, I shared a question.
Yes, Maharaj, you were saying that you're satisfied with your current diet,
Yeah.
and I was considering that there's a segment of our society that says that the deities would be more pleased with food that was grown on your own property.
That's right.
Their own property.
Mm-hmm.
Than something we bought in a store.
Exactly.
Have you noticed a difference?
Yeah, I mean, things that are grown by the devotees, I mean, there's this consciousness that enters into the food itself, into the raw ingredients. I mean, I'm looking forward to when we can have the wheat. The winter wheat comes out. I'm going to make you send me some of that.
I'm looking forward to sharing it with you.
Yeah. I mean, because, I mean, even I've experienced that when you have bread or chapatis or something made from fresh ground wheat, it actually tastes better. Because the wheat from the store is probably about 5 years old or something like that. Yeah, so, but anything grown, oh yeah, it's a fact. Anything grown locally or flowers grown is much more pleasing to Krishna. And I would agree with that 100%. And then you just have to, you adapt your mind. So you're not going to eat kiwi fruits. Who cares? You're not going to have mangoes. I know I like mangoes too, but you're not going to die.
You have persimmons, and you have blueberries, and you have grapes, and you have what else?
Muscadines.
Yeah, you got all these nice things here. So anyway, that would be the best thing. Okay, I think it's time for Prashad. Now that we're talking about blueberries and muscadines, you got my hunger up.
For your visit.
Thank you very much. All glorious to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai.